My name is Michelle Wynn, 30 years old. The taste of metal hits before the pain does, bright and coppery on my tongue as the numbers on my phone blur, 5:07 a.m., and my cheek meets the cold kitchen tile. The slap echoes like a cracked bell in the pre-dawn hush, a sound that splits the room cleanly in two, the part where I still believed I could reason with him, and the part where that belief dies. My belly, round and taut at 7 months, grazes the floor, and a wet heat spreads between my legs. Not blood, exactly, but something that makes the edges of my vision pulse. "Did you hear me, you useless cow?" he says, the voice that once poured promises into my hair, now threaded with clinical contempt. "Get up and make breakfast. My parents are hungry." He doesn't raise his voice. Alexander never has to. This is a performance review, not an argument. A memo stamped with consequences already decided. In the doorway, Willow's silk robe hangs like a banner. She chuckles, precise and satisfied, while Anthony settles his newspaper as if my body were a footnote on page 6. "About time someone taught her respect," Willow murmurs, the words slipping across the tile like oil. I push up on trembling palms. The world narrows to small, factual things. The grout line that needs scrubbing, the hairline fracture zigzagging across a beige tile, the way my nightgown sticks to my thigh. From the west hall, the motion sensor light flickers to life, a tiny eye blinking awake. Penelope arrives on the current of her perfume, phone raised, smile bright and cold. "Wake-up call, Whale," she says, circling, angling for the shot that flatters her cruelty. I stand because my son needs me to. I stand because the baby has gone still, and stillness is worse than pain. The kick is sudden and ecstatic, powered by something she has rehearsed in her head for days. Her boot connects full to my stomach. The air leaves me in a broken sound, and my legs forget what to do. I crumple, trying to shield the curve of me, the curve of him. I feel movement inside, violent, panicked, then a terrifying lull, like a wave pulling back too far from shore. "Oops," Penelope sing-songs, tilting her head. Another kick spears my ribs. Something gives with a hot crack that blooms lightning behind my eyes. My phone is on the nightstand. Not this phone, the new one he bought after the last time, but the other, the one I hid in the drawer that sticks. I crawl toward the hall, my palms sliding in the slick on the floor, my fingers slipping under the baseboard molding to catch the edge of the cord. Willow's heel lands on my hand, grinding down until my vision sparkles with starbursts. "Where do you think you're going?" I am going to press a button. The thought appears whole, lucid. 3 months ago, after the first hand at my throat, after the first issued apology that cost more than my mother's rent, I made my brother install something. Not a standard SOS, a backdoor that listens, a dead man's switch that, once armed, sends everything it hears and sees to a place neither Alexander's lawyers nor Willow's country club contacts can reach. My fingers, broken maybe, close around the old phone's cracked body. A line fissure runs across the corner like a river on a map. The screen wakes. Bottom right, red. I press. The phone vibrates, a soft animal whine. "Message sending," the shattered glass says. Penelope leans in to film my mouth shaping a scream that doesn't arrive. The hallway camera blinks again, as if clearing its throat. The kitchen smells of coffee and burnt toast I'm going to be blamed for. "That's what you get for trapping my brother," Penelope hisses, drawing her leg back. I think of my baby, the nickname I whisper to him when everyone sleeps, the one I promised would hear snow fall on the first day of winter. I think of Carter's hands steady on the workbench while he hid this lifeline inside a fitness app icon no one would suspect. The world tilts. The tile becomes the sky. Somewhere far away, the night sensor light clicks off. I wake to screaming, not mine. I drag to the surface through bright white and antiseptic air, the sound of machines politely counting seconds. The ceiling is a grid of soft squares. I try to sit. Straps bite my wrists. No, not straps, lines and sensors. My stomach is flat in a way that empties the room. "No," I say, the word arriving burnt and small. "No, no." A nurse with gold-flecked eyes appears, palms raised in the choreography of calming. "Honey, stay still. You're safe. You're at the hospital." My baby. The phrase scrapes out like gravel. A doctor steps into my line of sight, her scrubs marked with late night indecisions. Your son is alive, she says, and I feel my ribs loosen an inch. Barely. Emergency C-section, 29 weeks. Underweight, with rib fractures consistent with maternal trauma. He's in the NICU, and he's fighting. 29. I try to count backward. Math tumbles in place. The machines speed up to keep time with my fear. They'll come, I whisper. You don't... The door opens, and my brother is there, suit wrinkled, jaw unshaved, eyes that remember me before I started tiptoeing in my own skin. Behind him, our mother folds in on herself with her hand to her mouth, shoulders shaking the way churchwomen shake when the hymn isn't enough. Hey, Carter says, and 1,000 nights of us eating cheap noodles after Dad died rush back. He holds up his phone. You pressed the button. It did more than ping me. His voice blurs on the edges for the first time I can remember. The app activated a recording protocol, audio, video. It uploaded to a secure server I control. I sent it to the DA and my captain. Warrants were in motion before the ambulance even cleared your driveway. I stare at his screen. There we are. The kitchen's sheen. The stain I left trailing the hall. The motion sensors blink, catching Penelope's smile like a wildlife cam catching a fox with a chicken in its teeth. They have money, I say, because money can turn red into gray. They have people. Carter's mouth tilts. They tried. For 2 hours, my phone was a graveyard of friendly calls. Then a DA staffer, who has had enough of country club justice, moved it into the light. Nothing unravels the myth of a family like their own soundtrack. My mother is beside me now, her fingers light against my hairline, careful of the bruises. Oh, baby, she whispers, my baby. I want to say I'm sorry for the times I pulled back from her calls because the house disapproved of my voice, for the night I told her I was fine when my throat wore fingerprints. It's not your fault, she says, reading the repentances off my face. None of this is your fault. The doctor recites a litany I force my brain to hold: placental abruption, internal bleeding, 3 ribs fractured, mandibular hairline crack. The words stack into a wall I can lean against. Can I see him? I ask. The doctor weighs risks and finds her answer. 5 minutes, she says. He's fragile. So are you. Down hallways of scuffed floors and humming fluorescents, the world narrows again to small, factual things. Marker lines on the wall at a child's eye level, a candy wrapper under a bench, a bouquet at the nurse's station with no card. The NICU is an ocean of beeps and controlled breaths. My son is an island of tubes and will. 3 pounds and 4 ounces. The bruising is a map of someone else's choices. He is undeniably here. I cannot touch him yet. My palm meets the incubator's plastic, the same way I used to press my hand to my own belly and feel him press back. He's strong, the NATU nurse says, the kind of voice that makes machines behave. He acts like he didn't get the memo about being early. We like that in here. I count his breaths. I name the colors, the soft green of the monitor, the pale blue of the cap that cups his skull, the sterile white that once meant safety and now means repair. Everything in me shifts around his tiny lungs. The humiliation of broken plates and poured wine recedes to the edges. The terror organizes itself into a purpose with bones. What's his name? Mom asks, her cheeks wet. She needs to call him something that isn't fear. I study his miniature fist, tight as a comet. Phoenix, I whisper, because we are both ash and ember, and this is not the end of our story. His name is Phoenix. Carter's phone buzzes. He glances, then shows me the lock screen without speaking. Headlines stack like stairs. Arrest warrants issued in Hunt case. Emergency recording sent to Day A. Bail hearing set. A call flashes from an unknown number, then drops. The hospital liaison in a sharp suit appears at the NICU door for half a second and then thinks better of interrupting, leaving behind a folder on a chair that reads Victim Services in careful font. I imagine what is inside, a firm handshake disguised as a muzzle. I turn back to my son, to the soft fog of his breath against plastic. I should be afraid of what comes next. The cameras, the courtroom, the retaliation of a family who believes consequence is for other people, and I am afraid. But when I look at Phoenix, fear becomes specific and solvable. Feed him, heal him, tell the truth, undo the lie that a house this big could keep me small. When Carter squeezes my shoulder, there is a tremor in his fingers that says, "Our lives just got messier, and we are doing this anyway." "Rest," the doctor says. "Your body needs it." I close my eyes and listen to the NICU's steady metronome, to the vow I can hear in my brother's breathing, to the soft thread of Mom's prayer. Somewhere in the hospital's crawl space, a router lights up as a video travels a wire it can't be called back from. Somewhere in a mansion's empty hall, a motion sensor blinks to nobody at all. The fuse is lit. I let sleep take me with my son's name on my tongue. We met in a coffee shop where I worked between clinical shifts, the kind of place where the espresso machine sounded like a dragon clearing its throat, and morning light cut clean stripes across the tables. He ordered a black coffee and left a $100 tip with his number folded into a neat triangle. "For making my morning brighter," he said, and I laughed, because back then romance felt like something you could pour into a to-go cup and carry without spilling. 6 months was a reel of perfect scenes. Candlelit dinners, where he asked about pediatrics and listened like my dream was his. Weekend getaways with photos at sunset. Bouquets arriving at the hospital with handwritten notes that made the other nurses tease me. My mother loved how he opened doors. Carter did not. "Something's off," he said, standing in our mother's small kitchen, thumb tapping the scar on his knuckle that shows up when he's thinking. His eyes are empty when he's not performing. I accused him of being overprotective. He didn't argue. He just hugged me longer than usual and told me to keep my spare key. The wedding was small, simple, and loud with compliments I didn't know were eulogies for the girl I'd been. I wore my grandmother's lace. He wore tailored certainty. His family stood like a painting you can't afford, willow in black despite my pastel request, lips pressed in a perfect line as if grief were appropriate for a son's marriage. Anthony glued to business calls that never seemed to end, Penelope catching angles for her followers, adjusting her smile in any reflective surface that would have her. "Old money families are different," Alexander murmured when I asked why no one danced. "Reserved." I translated that to refinement because I wanted to. Later, on a balcony that smelled like white roses and ocean, he pressed his mouth to my hair and promised forever, and I tucked the feeling into the softest part of me. The estate wasn't a house, so much as a jurisdiction. 10 acres of groomed certainty, a colonial facade with columns that stared down at you like judges. "It makes financial sense," Alexander said when I brought up an apartment. "Why pay rent when there's space here?" He walked me through rooms while Willow's decorator took measurements without asking me a single question. Within a week, the airy blue curtains I chose were replaced with heavy burgundy drapes that turned daylight into an obligation. "You have no taste, dear," Willow said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Trust me." Trust became a word that meant do what we want. The first month was an orientation disguised as hospitality. Family Council sent emails about household policy with bullet points that read like HR memos, joint accounts streamline life, car unnecessary for domestic efficiency, personal phones replaced with devices on the family plan for security. When I balked, a concierge doctor arrived with a vitamin drip and a prescription for rest. I signed papers after a calming sedative for my faintness and woke to learn my car was sold and the proceeds deposited into a shared account where my name appeared in a smaller font. The wardrobe Willow curated arrived in garment bags, muted dresses that photographed well with the decor, heels I would later learn were impossible to run in. "We'll keep your little scrubs in storage," she said, patting my arm. "It's better for the family if you're present." I got pregnant on a day when the light was good and the silence between us felt like possibility. 2 pink lines turned my chest into an unlocked room. I bought tiny booties and hid them in a box, spent 6 hours ruining and then nailing beef Wellington, put on the green dress he loved. Willow found me plating, sniffed, and said, "You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. When I didn't answer, she stepped nearer and I could smell her perfume, expensive and sharp. Did you think an air would make you belong? The word air made the air thinner. Alexander loves me, I said, because I needed it to be true. Alexander loves your compliance, she replied, examining her manicure as if it were a calendar. Did he tell you about the others? The ones who learned ambition doesn't survive in this family? She left me with a platter cooling on the counter and a cold stripe down my spine. He came home at midnight with whiskey on his breath and a loosened tie. Congratulations, he said, and the smile he'd used to move my life forward clicked off like a lamp. I suppose you successfully trapped me. The word trapped was a blade. This is our baby, I said, voice fraying. It's an anchor, he said. Let's not pretend we're a love story. I slapped him. It surprised us both how fast my hand moved. He smiled, slow and private, and said, "Do that again and find out what happens." I told myself it was alcohol. I told myself stress. I told myself the story I needed to sleep. The first time his hand closed around my throat, I was 5 months along. "Who is he?" he demanded, face so close I could count pores. "Who are you texting?" "My mother," I gasped, because truth didn't matter once suspicion took the wheel. He scrolled through my phone with one hand, while the other measured the diameter of my windpipe, found nothing because there was nothing, and threw the phone against the wall. "You belong to me," he said, palm flattening over my stomach as if making a seal. "Every breath, every move. If you even think about leaving, you'll regret it, and accidents happen." The next morning, there was a new phone and a diamond bracelet with a note. "Sorry about last night. Stress at work. Love you." The bracelet cost more than my mother's rent. I put it on because refusing made things worse, and the glitter felt like a handcuff that said, "Wife." Willow formalized the training at 6 months. 5 a.m. wake up, she said over the breakfast I'd made after the housekeeper's cooking was deemed heavy. Eggs Benedict at 5:30, fruit and coffee at 175 degrees. The specificity was part of the violence. "The doctor said I need rest," I tried, and she smiled like a tutor who loves a challenge. "Light activity is healthy. This is very light." Alexander, scrolling, without looking up, "Do as mother asks." The night shift housekeeper started leaving a glass of water outside our door. The groundskeeper paused once by a window when a thud sounded upstairs, then looked away, because sometimes survival looks like pretending you didn't hear. I created a ritual no one could police. At night, I whispered our baby's secret nickname into the fabric of the pillow, and I promised him we'd be gone by the first snowfall. That promise became a lighthouse, and then a whip when the snow came and I was still there. The humiliation became a language they spoke fluently. At dinner, 3 weeks before the morning that would split our life, I served roasted chicken on a platter I'd held for too long. My hand cramped. Gravy streaked across Willow's silk like an ink spill. "You clumsy bitch," she said softly, and her hand tangled in my hair and yanked until something in my neck made a sound that didn't belong in a dining room. Anthony laughed the way men laugh, when they've already cashed in on a belief about how the world works. Alexander stood. I thought, finally. He poured his red wine over my head, cool liquid finding the curve of my ear. Penelope recorded, framing my humiliation like content. "Clean yourself up," Alexander said pleasantly. "You're embarrassing us." I ran upstairs, lock clicking like a child's toy. Sobs came out of me in a rhythm I didn't recognize. Our son kicked like a metronome set too fast, then too slow, then pounding my guilt from the inside. I found my old phone in the drawer that sticks, the one Carter had once opened with a butter knife, and coaxed it awake through cracks of light. "Come get me," I whispered when he answered. "Now." "I'm on my way," he said. "No lecture, just coordinates. Pack a bag. 30 minutes. I didn't have 30 minutes. The door splintered with a sound I felt in my teeth. "Who are you calling?" Alexander asked, voice very calm, which was always worse. He knelt, making intimacy out of threat. "I have software on every device," he said conversationally. "Your brother's coming? Good. Tell him not to. He's up for promotion, isn't he? My father calls the commissioner. One word, and your detective becomes a cautionary tale." He pressed his mouth to my ear and gave me a script. I called Carter and recited it while Alexander breathed proof that love can sound like a hostage note. Carter's silence was a wound I made. Alexander ended the call and crushed the phone beneath his heel as if to stamp out the last spark of me. That night, he locked the door and left me with nothing but the wrong kind of quiet. At 2 a.m., contractions tore through too soon and then receded, a bad tide. I lay on the floor counting cracks in the ceiling, promising my son we'd leave in the morning, promising the first snowfall had been a false deadline, promising promises as if they were currency someone would accept. At 4:47 a.m., footsteps gathered in the hall like weather. At 4:59, the door opened and his silhouette filled it, and I understood the shape of the day. "Get up," he said, and I stood because my son needed me to. And the slap came like punctuation, and the kitchen tile waited to learn my face. The NICU hums like a small universe, beeps, regulated breaths, nurses moving with the calm of people who fight storms every day. I keep my palm on the incubator because the thin plastic is the closest I can get to skin. Phoenix's chest rises in measured hills, ribbed with tape and tubing, and every rise feels like a promise kept by a stranger on my behalf. The nurse with the gold-flecked eyes whispers updates, as if telling a bedtime story. Oxygen levels, temperature, a tiny clenched fist opening for the first time since dawn. "He likes the sound of your voice," she says, even though I haven't said anything. I realize my mouth has been shaping prayers in silence. Carter waits by the door, phone pinned to his ear, jaw squared in a way that says he's answering questions that arrive already sharp. My mother sits on a vinyl chair with her hands wrapped around a paper cup she's forgotten to drink. Every few minutes, she looks up at the monitor and then at me, as if measuring the distance between the worst night of our lives and the one in front of us. A folder appears on the chair outside the NICU, a soft knock against metal. When I retrieve it, a page on top reads "Victim Services" in a font that looks like it wants to be kind. Inside, a glossy one-sheet about confidential support grants, fast-tracked therapy coverage, a liaison who can help manage media. Tucked behind it is a stapled form with a signature line describing mutual expectations of discretion under the guise of privacy. I slide the form back into the folder and put the folder under the chair. Phoenix's breath set my terms. Tell the truth or the lie wins again. Carter ends the call and steps closer, lowering his voice the way a man does when a room is carrying more than it can hold. The DA's office has the files. All of them. Your audio, the hallway camera, the metadata. They've executed searches at the estate. They've impounded devices. His lips twist. Anthony's lawyers tried to argue chain of custody issues before noon. He glances at my mother as if to check if the next sentence will shatter her. Bail hearing in an hour. My mother swallows. For them? Her tone stretches around the word them like it's a curse. Carter nods. For all three. He looks at me. I sent the recording to my captain before I left my apartment. Internal Affairs already pinged me about procedural irregularities. Their words, not mine. He runs a thumb along his knuckle, the scar he taps when he's thinking. I told them I did what any brother would do when he receives proof a woman's being beaten within an inch of her life. If they want to write me up for it, they can do it after the arrests stick. I want to apologize for the risk I've asked him to run. Later, I will. Now, I nod once, because we share a language where one nod stands for an entire paragraph of gratitude and guilt and yes, keep going. They're going to come for you, I say softly. They'll try to spin this, bury it, sand down the edges. Carter's mouth lifts in a humorless smile. They already started, but the DA made a move. Someone there leaked the audio to 3 outlets at once. He shows me his phone. The lock screen is a staircase of headlines and push alerts. Hunt family accused in viral abuse recording. District Attorney. We will seek maximum penalties. Commentator. A window into wealth and impunity. A video still shows Penelope's face paused mid-laugh, her boot a breath away from my belly. My stomach heaves. I cling to the incubator, to the flimsy salvation of acrylic and warm air. When this goes public, I ask, are they going to say my name? The nurse looks up. My mother squeezes her cup until it squeals. Carter answers carefully. They'll try to blur it at first, but the internet isn't a room with a door. The truth lands where it lands. I breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth, like they taught me in the childbirth class I never finished. Outside the NICU window, a man with a cap pulled low over his eyes passes by slowly, glances in, and keeps moving. His posture trips something familiar in my throat. A groundskeeper from the estate, I think for a second, then shake it off. Not here, not now. My brain is splintering what it can't process into ghosts. The hospital liaison returns with a practiced smile that stops short of the NICU line. Ms. Wynne, she says, I'm here to help coordinate services, Tish. The word coordinate makes me picture a stage manager bringing up the lights for a scene I didn't audition for. She keeps a polite distance when I don't invite her closer. There's also a private donation, anonymous, that can be routed to your care plan. It comes with no strings. My mother looks at me. We both know what strings look like, even when we can't see them. Thank you, I tell the liaison, but we'll go through the DA's office. The liaison's smile thins a fraction, then reconstitutes, as if she's proud of me for the wrong reason. Of course, Ine, she says, and leaves the folder where it is. We are moved to a quiet room for the bail hearing to stream on a mounted TV, because the DA believes victims shouldn't learn their fate from a crawl at the bottom of cable news. I sit on the edge of a plastic chair with a blanket over my legs. The camera in the courtroom is fixed and feels like an eye that never blinks. The judge is a woman with hair the color of iron and the kind of posture that says she has no patience for ornate lies. When the cases are called, Alexander looks thinner already, the sinew under his jaw more visible. Willow's mouth is a straight white line. Penelope's eyes are swollen but dry, which is worse somehow. The defense attorneys stand in expensive suits and talk about reputations and deep community ties, about stress and misunderstanding, and a pregnant woman prone to clumsiness. They use words like alleged and context and regrettable. The prosecutor says, "Play the tape." In the hospital room, the audio is clear enough to put me back on the floor, tasting metal. The slap lands again. The laughter lands again. Penelope's, "Did I kick too hard?" glitters like a shard. My mother covers her mouth. Carter's hand finds my shoulder. The judge's face doesn't move much, but her eyes do. "Bail denied," she says, and bangs something that suddenly sounds like a blessing. Willow's attorney sputters about constitutional rights. The judge repeats herself, slower, as if delivering a line a child pretending not to hear. A nurse slips in with a new chart for Phoenix, and her voice climbs a half step with delight. "He's tolerating feeds," she says, as if letting milk into your body is a kind of bravery. I fold the blanket tighter around my legs. Beneath the paint, my bones are singing. I don't recognize the song yet, only that it isn't Fears. By sunset, the call log on my mother's phone looks like a stock ticker. Women. So many women. Some leave messages that sound like they're reporting a crime they're not sure has a name. Others hang up mid-sob. One says, "I worked for them 13 years," in a voice that sounds like a rope fraying. Carter's email fills with statements. A former housekeeper remembers blood on a stair runner in winter. She had been given a severance and a confidentiality letter after a fall. A groundskeeper submits time-stamped maintenance logs, contradicting a weekend alibi, attaching photos of tire tracks outside a locked gate. Quiet witnesses who walked past my pain because walking past was the only way to stay employed now circle back with their heads up. I don't know whether to hold them or hate them. I do neither. I write their names in my head so I won't forget who decided to tell the truth when truth finally felt like a table with chairs around it. By morning, a local paper runs an editorial titled "The House on the Hill," an indictment disguised as a neighborhood profile. Commentators argue about wealth and privacy, and how quickly we turn suffering into entertainment. The worst comments call me a liar for sport. The best call me a symbol, which is another kind of cage. I am neither. I am a person whose jaw aches when she chews, and who has learned more about courage in 12 hours than in 30 years. The DA visits in person, a woman with a careful step and eyes that study outcomes. "You've already done the most important thing," she says. "You survived, and you preserved the evidence before they could erase it." She lays out options with a physician's clarity. I don't have to testify. The recording is enough to hold the line. If I do testify, the defense will attempt to reduce me to a provocation, a misremembering, a problem with hormones. They will try to make you small, she says. We will object. The judge will contain it, but you will hear it. She waits. What do you want? I look at Phoenix's chart on the wall, where a neat hand has written tolerating in all caps and circled it. I think of the anonymous bouquets at the nurse's station, at least one of which came with a card that read, "For a swift recovery in writing, I swear I've seen on Willow's party invitations." I think of a groundskeeper in a cap tilting his head at a television mounted above a bar, recognizing a hallway he once mopped in. I think of the first snowfall I promised and missed. I'll testify, I say. Not because they need my voice to prove what they already know, but because other women will hear it. Because the girl I used to be might hear it and understand a promise is not a prison. Carter exhales like he'd been holding his breath through the entire century. Okay, he says, simple and steady. Then we build. He mentions a support group forming, women who've stepped out of contracts and shadows, Emma among them, the fiancé from 4 years ago, whose name I only knew as a cautionary tale whispered by Willow's friends. The DA nods. We'll prep you gently and thoroughly. We'll also move for a protective order that extends to your mother and to Phoenix. The baby's name in the DA's mouth rings like a bell in a different church. That afternoon, a volunteer from a local shelter brings care bags, soft blankets, lotions that don't smell like hospitals, a burner phone tucked into a pocket labeled "just in case." I slide the phone into my bag beside my new device because redundancy is another word for love now. On the TV in the corner, a scrolling chyron announces, "Bail denied. Hunt family remanded until trial." In the lower right, a photo of the estate flickers. Columns tall as verdicts, windows reflecting a sky too blue to be believed. For a moment, I see that front door open and a man in a cap step out, hat in hand, eyes on the pavement. I don't know why I know he'll show up at the sentencing 2 months from now, sitting in the last row, nodding once when our eyes meet. But I do. Some stories telegraph their next beat if you listen close enough under the noise. When visiting hours end, I rest my forehead against the incubator one last time and let the hum of machines fold around what's left of me. I'm afraid. I'm ready. Both are true at the same time, like dawn and streetlights coexisting for a minute before one concedes to the other. We testify, I whisper to Phoenix, to myself, to any woman whose phone is buzzing because she pressed a button and the world finally listened. We testify and we don't look away. The courthouse smells like coffee gone cold and nerves. Every step toward the witness room feels heavier than the one before. The hallways echo with shoes, whispered strategy, the hum of vending machines dispensing sugar for courage. I've never been in a place where so many people breathe the same tense air. Phoenix is with my mother at home. I left before sunrise, kissed his hair, and told him we were going to finish the story. He cooed, unaware that today decides what kind of world he grows up in. Carter waits by the security checkpoint, eyes alert, badge visible but muted. He squeezes my shoulder as I pass through the metal detector. "They're in there," he says. "Front table." I nod. The motion small and controlled, like a secret I can't afford to drop. Inside the courtroom, the ceiling is higher than I expected, an architecture of authority meant to dwarf anyone beneath it. The Hunts sit in a neat line of orange and beige. Alexander in his jumpsuit, Willow in a suit 2 sizes too big, but still carrying the posture of someone who expects to be obeyed, and Penelope without makeup, her hair flat against her skull. Anthony watches from the gallery, separate trial pending, same arrogance intact. I can feel his eyes on me like a dare. The prosecutor, Catherine Williams, is younger than I imagined, maybe late 30s, calm in a dark blazer. She smiles once, briefly, the way a pilot does before turbulence. We're going to hit rough air, but we'll land. The judge enters, Margaret Torres, gray hair pulled back, voice clipped and steady. All rise. The words shiver through the room like a metronome, snapping every heartbeat to attention. The trial begins with sound. The recording fills the space, my screams, the slap, Willow's voice slicing through like glass. Someone in the gallery gasps. Another leaves the room crying. I hold my breath through the parts I've memorized. Penelope's "Did I kick too hard?" The laughter that follows. Catherine doesn't look at the screen. She watches the jury instead, reading their faces. When the audio ends, the silence is thick enough to hold shape. Judge Torres clears her throat. Proceed. Catherine calls me to the stand. My knees tremble once before remembering their job. The clerk swears me in. The microphone smells faintly of disinfectant and fear. Ms. Wynne, Catherine begins, voice gentle but anchored. Please tell the court how you met Alexander Hunt. I speak. The words come in order, rehearsed but still raw. The coffee shop, the whirlwind, the wedding where no one danced, the mansion that turned into a cage. Each sentence builds like a brick wall around the person I used to be. I talk about isolation, about the morning routines that felt like training manuals, about the choke that left purple fingerprints around my throat. I keep my tone even, factual, because truth needs no embroidery. When I describe the night he smashed my phone and threatened Carter's career, Catherine nods slowly. Why didn't you leave? She asks. The courtroom tilts a little. I answer carefully. Because leaving meant choosing between my safety and my baby's survival, and I thought staying was safer. The honesty tastes like metal again, but it's clean this time. Then the defense rises. Mr. Klein, Alexander's lawyer, has perfect hair and a voice polished by privilege. Ms. Wynne, he says with a sympathetic half smile, you were under significant emotional strain, correct? I was pregnant, I reply, and perhaps unsteady, prone to overreaction. I tilt my head. Being beaten doesn't make me unstable. It makes him violent. A ripple moves through the gallery. Quiet approval. Quickly hushed. Klein presses on. Isn't it true you had a history of anxiety? That pregnancy can heighten emotions? Catherine objects. The judge overrules the implication before the sentence finishes. Move on, counselor. Klein shifts tactics, voice dripping false concern. You admit to slapping my client once? Yes. So you initiated physical violence. I defended myself. Perhaps he was reacting in self-defense. I meet his eyes and say, he was reacting to losing control. The jury's pens freeze mid-note. Klein exhales, then flips a page. Would you describe yourself as clumsy, Ms. Wynne? Not particularly. He gestures toward my medical report. Multiple falls. Perhaps these injuries were accidental? I lean closer to the mic. My son's ribs broke in the same pattern as the heel of Penelope Hunt's boot. Accidents don't leave designer imprints. Judge Torres's gavel taps once, more warning than reprimand. Let the witness finish without interruption. Klein glances at Alexander, who stares straight ahead, jaw tight, eyes empty. The same emptiness Carter saw months ago. 3 hours stretch into an afternoon. I speak until my voice blurs. When Catherine finally says, no further questions, my throat feels lined with sand. The judge grants a recess. I make it to the bathroom before the adrenaline runs out. The fluorescent light hums above me. My reflection looks like someone I almost recognize. I grip the sink until the shaking stops. In another stall, a woman is crying softly, one of the other witnesses maybe. I slip a paper towel under the divider. She takes it without a word. When court resumes, the prosecution calls Emma Whitmore. The name stirs something, familiar, forbidden. She takes the stand. Elegant, but pale, her posture carved out of old fear. I was engaged to Alexander Hunt 4 years ago, she says, and a rustle passes through the courtroom. She tells her story, the same pattern, the isolation, the staircase, the miscarriage. When Catherine asks why she never reported, Emma looks straight at Willow. They paid me $1 million and a non-disclosure. I had medical debt and a broken back. They said if I spoke, they'd ruin my family. Her hands tremble, but her voice doesn't. I took the money. I spent 4 years hating myself for it. Then I saw her story. She nods toward me. I came because silence is complicity. 2 more women follow. A former assistant of Penelope's describes emotional warfare dressed as mentorship. A housekeeper testifies about blood on a stair runner that wasn't from a spill. The groundskeeper, cap in hand, confirms he logged tire tracks near a side gate the morning after I was attacked. I didn't say nothing then, he murmurs, but I'm saying it now. He nods once toward me before stepping down. Then Catherine brings out the final blow. Financial records projected on the screen. Offshore accounts. Hush money payments labeled Settlement W, Consulting, Special Projects. Over $7 million funneled to silence victims and employees. Each entry is another stone pulled from the Hunt's fortress. The defense tries to recover. Willow's lawyer claims she was merely supporting her son, a traditional mother. Penelope's counsel paints her as misguided, not malicious. Anthony's representative argues generational misunderstanding. Judge Torres's patience thins visibly. Counselors, she says, there's misunderstanding, and then there's criminal enterprise. Learn the difference. Catherine's closing argument is precise fire. You've heard the recordings. You've seen the bruises, the paperwork, the payments. The defense asks you to consider their reputations. I ask you to consider humanity. She gestures toward the photo of Phoenix in the NICU, tiny and defiant. What kind of reputation allows someone to laugh while kicking a pregnant woman? What kind of family pays for silence instead of repentance? She pauses. You, the jury, have the power to remind this family that money cannot whitewash cruelty. The jury files out. 4 hours of waiting. The room breathes in unison, no one daring to speak above the heartbeat of the clock. When they return, the forewoman's hands shake as she reads. In the case of the state versus Alexander Hunt, guilty on attempted murder, guilty on domestic violence, guilty on assault resulting in bodily harm. Willow blinks once, composure cracking hairline thin. In the case of the state versus Willow Hunt, guilty on conspiracy to commit assault, guilty on aiding and abetting attempted murder. Penelope's shoulders curl inward before the last verdict lands. In the case of the state versus Penelope Hunt, guilty on assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, guilty on assault of an unborn child. The room erupts. The gavel pounds. I close my eyes, exhale, and for the first time in months, the air doesn't hurt going in. Sentencing follows swiftly. Judge Torres's voice is a scalpel. Alexander Hunt, 30 years in prison, no parole for 15. Willow Hunt, 15 years. Penelope Hunt, 20 years. No early release. No minimum security transfers. She looks directly at me. Ms. Wynne, on behalf of this court, and as a human being, I am sorry for what you endured. Your courage made this justice possible. My knees almost give. Catherine steadies me by the elbow. Carter's face is wet. I've never seen him cry. The guards lead the Hunts out through a side door, chains murmuring like rain on marble. When it's over, I stand outside the courthouse steps with reporters shouting questions I can't hear. Flashbulbs pop like small explosions. I think of Phoenix's steady breathing, of the NICU's machines, of a promise kept. The sky is gray, heavy with snow, the first of the season. And I remember what I told him once, that we'd be free by the first snowfall. Snowflakes brush my lashes, cold and light, and melt on my skin like forgiveness, finding its temperature. 2 years later, I stand in front of the mirror in the small office that smells like antiseptic and lavender lotion. My nurse's badge catches the light from the window. Michelle Wynne, RN, Pediatric Wing. Letters that still surprise me. Through the glass, I can see the children's garden outside the hospital, the same hospital where Phoenix fought for his life in an incubator that hummed like a heartbeat when mine had almost stopped. The same hallways Carter carried me through while promising we'd make it out. Now, the walls are painted with murals of cartoon suns, and the laughter down the corridor sounds like redemption. Mama! Phoenix's voice cuts through the memory like sunlight through blinds. He's 2 now. Sturdy legs, wild curls, eyes that flash mischief and mercy in the same instant. Carter stands behind him, holding a small backpack decorated with cartoon planets. Someone insisted on seeing you before daycare, my brother says. I crouch down and scoop Phoenix into my arms. His warmth grounds me in the present. You keeping Uncle Carter out of trouble? Phoenix nods solemnly, then grins, flashing the same defiance that once kept him breathing through tubes. Carter hands me an envelope. This came from the civil court this morning. Inside, a check, $7 million, and a formal letter sealed with the state crest. The civil suit is over. The Hunts estate liquidated, their assets seized, their trust funds rerouted by order of the court. The letter lists restitution for medical trauma, psychological damages, and lifelong care for Phoenix. I read the number twice and still feel nothing. Then something small, a crack of relief, not for money, but for proof the story didn't end in their favor. It's not enough, Carter says quietly. No, I say, but it's enough to build something new. With part of it, I've already paid off Mom's mortgage. The rest will start the Phoenix Foundation, a refuge for women who can't yet call 911 without flinching. We'll provide safe phones, devices like the one Carter designed for me, bundled in kits called Phoenix Packs. Every survivor who presses that red button will know she's not alone. Carter looks out the window. You've turned hell into architecture. I smile faintly. You built the first floor. The trial rewired the city. Anthony Hunt's separate conviction for embezzlement and fraud came months later, 25 years. His second family sued him. His company dissolved. Willow's Country Club revoked her membership within a week of sentencing. Penelope's social accounts vanished. Her followers dropped like autumn leaves. The Hunt name, once whispered with envy, now tastes like rust when people speak it. But justice is never symmetrical. Some nights I still wake gasping, the echo of boots in my ribs. Some mornings I walk the pediatric ward and hear a cry that sounds like my own from that kitchen floor. The difference now is choice. I can keep walking and still breathe. The hospital intercom chimes. Code lavender. Family support room. My shift begins. Carter lifts Phoenix into his arms. We'll wait for you at the park after daycare, he says. I nod, brushing a kiss across Phoenix's hair. Promise? He asks. Promise, I whisper. Promises mean something different now. They're not cages, they're doors. Halfway through the shift, my phone buzzes, a number I don't recognize. I answer because I've learned the unknown can sometimes be someone reaching for a lifeline. Is this the woman from the Hunt case? The voice is young, trembling. Yes, I say carefully. My name's Rebecca. I saw your story online. I pressed the emergency button like you did. The police came. He's arrested. But I'm scared. I don't know what to do next. My throat tightens, but my voice stays steady. Where are you right now? The hospital, she says. They're checking me for injuries. I'm 12 weeks pregnant. I close my eyes, remembering another hospital. Another night, soaked in fluorescent fear. Listen to me carefully, I say. You've already done the hardest part. You asked for help. Now you need to stay with the people who will protect you. Do you have family? My sister's on her way. Good. Stay with her. Don't go back to him, no matter what he promises. Press charges. Tell your story. And if you need help, legal, financial, emotional, call this number. I give her Carter's direct line and the Foundation's hotline. There's silence, then a sound like breathing finally allowed. Will it get better? She whispers. I look at Phoenix's photo on my desk, the same grin he wore this morning, the same spark that pulled me through machines and nightmares. Yes, I say. It gets better. Not quickly, not easily. Some days you'll feel like you're still trapped. But every sunrise that finds you still here is proof you're winning. You're stronger than you think, and you're not alone. She starts to cry, the kind that sounds like release. Thank you, she says. Rest, I tell her. You and your baby deserve peace. When the call ends, I sit for a moment in the quiet hum of the hospital, watching sunlight crawl across the floor. 43 women have called since the trial ended. 43 lives interrupted mid-sentence, all finding a new paragraph. Each call reminds me why we survived. When my shift ends, I drive to the park. The sky is fading to lavender and gold. Carter waves from a bench, and Phoenix runs toward me, his small shoes slapping the pavement. I lift him up, spin once, both of us laughing. Behind us, children's swings squeal in rhythm, and for a heartbeat, the world is weightless. Higher, Mama, he shouts, and I push the swing until he soars against the orange sky, a blur of motion and joy. The wind carries his laughter back to me, a melody written over the silence of that house on the hill. I watch him and think about the way fire destroys and also purifies. Phoenix isn't just his name, it's a prophecy fulfilled. We rose from ashes that once buried us. For every woman who pressed that red button, for every child born into a world that will one day demand courage, I whisper a quiet promise. We are still rising. And as the swing arcs higher, catching the last light of day, I see the reflection of the setting sun in his eyes, bright, unbroken, alive.